Good evening. Not the most populous crowd that I've ever seen, but good evening nonetheless. Our board has been in closed session since 5:30 p.m. for purposes of discussion of lawfully closed meeting minutes, whether for purposes of approval of a body or the minutes of, I'm sorry, it just blacked out, minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes that are mandated, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, and dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, and finally, litigation where an action against, affecting, or on behalf of a particular district has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal. So I will entertain a motion to come out of closed session.
Second.
Okay, and a roll call, please.
Sure. Student ambassadors present, Austin Hanson and Stephen Trainer. Board members, Kristen.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
Can I take the vote?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry about that. I'm
All in favor?
all in favor. Sorry about that. I'm making my other. Aye. Any abstentions? No? Okay. Sorry, motion carries. Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
Ambassadors present, Austin Hanson and Stephen Trainer. Board members present, Kristen
I'll
Fitzgerald.
go back to mission.
Susan Price, Terry Fielden, Jackie Romberg, Susan Crotty, Donna Wanke, and Mike Getch.
And a huge thank you. Huge welcome to our new student ambassadors. And let me go back as I was we tried to start punctually at 7, and I got a little ahead of myself. Let me go back to before roll call, our very all-important mission. And we live by this, as do our students, and everyone in the district, is to educate students to be self-directed learners, collaborative workers, complex thinkers, quality producers, and community contributors. And with that, we will go to Pledge of Allegiance. And we don't have our students here, but we will next month.
Well, they can lead us.
Maybe Stephen. I was going
Yeah,
to say Stephen
Stephen
Dawson.
Dawson.
We don't have the young students here. We don't have the young
The old students.
Yeah.
On the vote already?
That's it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And by students, I meant the elementary students usually help us with that, but we had the older experience variety. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate that. And I will turn the next section over to a couple of brief good news comments from our superintendent.
Well, I have nothing but fantastic news for the 17,500 young children at home watching us right now on the World Wide Web. It is that school starts for you on Wednesday. Just a reminder, our first day of school. It's the greatest day of the year, first day of school every year. So school will be in session again starting on Wednesday. But then also looking ahead on the calendar, it is just looking at events coming up. On Saturday, we are privileged as a district to collaborate with the DuPage County NAACP in hosting their 3rd annual College Readiness and Scholarship Fair over at Naperville Central High School from 8 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon. So our Community Relations Office, Julie Carlson and Betty Stevenson, has been working very closely with DuPage County NAACP to host that event. So that's great news because that's a great opportunity for us to, again, partner with an important community collaborator in bringing opportunities to our kids. So great news, and looking forward to the beginning of the school year. We're ready to go, that's for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. And in every meeting we have a chance for public comment where the public can come and speak as an individual. I 3 minutes and a group 5 minutes, and I have not received any slips, but is there anyone out there that would like to speak as a part of our public comment section? I'm not seeing anyone get up. So we will move along to communications, and we'll move to student ambassador reports. I don't know if you've flipped a coin or are going.
Or if there's even anything really to report yet.
Oh, yeah, I bet they look like there's something.
Well, summer's ending up soon, and we're all getting ready for school. Athletics are underway, and we're excited to be back. And also, I'm sure me and Austin as well. Thank you for this year and have the opportunity to be here.
Just to kind of reiterate that, thank you so much for letting us be here. It's really pretty cool. As far as like the summer goes, everyone's pretty much that I've talked to has had a pretty good summer. From North especially. We've been doing, there's actually a new non-for-profit in the area called Naper Bridge, and they've been doing some high school events, so a lot of the North and Central kids have been kind of being a part, kind of going to those things, so that's been pretty cool. Tomorrow actually is our Enter with Pride for our freshmen, so all the incoming freshmen will get a chance to kind of tour the halls, or tour the school, and without all the older upperclassmen kind of looking down on them. So it would be kind of cool. And then Wednesday, the first day of school, we have our senior extravaganza where we kind of get to have some fun. So besides that, homecoming is September 28th, so that's coming up. That'll be before this next board meeting, so coming up soon.
What's the theme this year?
We don't know yet. Oh, for seniors?
Yeah.
Seniors is a Hakuna Matata, and the H is like a 1-4, so it's like, don't worry.
It's a good way to start the year. And Austin,
Yes.
the freshmen that enter tomorrow,
Right.
they learn about is that where they learn about all the clubs and organizations and all and sign up for?
We have later in the year, we have 8th graders come to like our club fair, which is the same kind of
okay.
thing. But this year is more about like going through the school. We have our freshman year information mentors. We call it FYI. I think Central is FMP. But same kind of thing. We have them lead the small groups and kind of tour the school, get their class T-shirts and have some pizza and so listen to some motivational
Nice welcoming,
speakers.
yeah.
Right.
It's a big old building, a little intimidating to
Right.
8th graders, but
Both schools do an Enter with Pride program, and I know Bob has worked with both of our high school principals, and that's a program that they'd like to see even worked on a little bit more, and some opportunities that we may bring to this board for future consideration. It's an optional program, and so one of the things that I know our 2 high school principals have talked about wanting to do is really look at models in which they can capture the opportunity for all incoming freshmen to participate in this great experience. So I know Mr. Ross has been working with the 2 high school principals and staff and will continue to do so, and if we have some recommendations maybe for the board that may consider in terms of how we look at our calendar, we'll bring those to you.
That's
But,
actually really-
it's a great event.
That's a really good point because, as you said, it's optional, and so like not everyone that has like there's some kids that don't have the accessibility to get
Right.
transportation to and fro.
Right.
So because it is at night and
Right.
the day before school. So
Awesome. Thank you both, gentlemen. A written communication in board docs, different FOIA requests are there. You're at your leisure. You're welcome to look at those. And we're at superintendent staff school report.
Well, we have a special guest with us to give our first superintendent's report, and that's Craig Siepke from our White Architecture. And he'll come up here as he's getting ready. Just a brief introduction on what we're going to do here. Craig's going to really highlight 3 significant projects that are, 1, nearing completion, 2, just beginning, and 3, options and opportunities for the board to really talk a little bit about today for some more clear direction for White and for us in moving forward. And then when Craig's done, Steve is going to share with us some of the work that we've been doing just internally in terms of maintenance and construction for the year. So with that, we'll turn it over to Craig and ask him to make sure he brings his microphone close, make sure he introduces himself for the camera, and then share with us some of the great work that's getting done.
Good evening, everyone. Is this on?
Is it blue light?
Blue light.
Yeah, blue light's on. Okay.
A little closer.
Well, thanks for having me here.
Move a little closer.
Still?
The blue one at the bottom.
Okay. How about that?
There you
All
go.
right, okay.
He builds buildings.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, thanks for having me. It's been a little while since I've been in front of you. I think last time was in March, if I'm not mistaken. We were in the infant stages of some of the planning over at Steeple Run and looking a little bit more closely at Prairie. Elmwood, I think had just received bids. And those are the 3 projects that I'd like to update you on tonight. And then also, with regard to Steeple Run, as Superintendent Bridges said, I'd like to get some feedback from you and some direction on how we wish to proceed with that particular project. So I brought the Prezi presentation back. So if you all take a look, and we're going to go through each one of the projects one by one. Just as a little reminder, over at Elmwood Elementary School, we have a gym that we are currently under construction for. If you've had an opportunity of seeing what was going on, a lot of activity started before the school year, and then, of course, during the summer. We started things in June. We're looking at completing the addition in October, mid-October, at a rough cost about 1.7 is what was approved. We are right on track with that. It's about a 6,400 square foot addition, and then some modifications, associated modifications to the parking lot. This gives you a little idea of the footprint of the space and how it connects to the existing building. It does include a stage as well as some additional much-needed storage in the building. It's going to allow the district then to go ahead and separate gym activities from lunch, the cafeteria, and the kids eating lunch. So a bigger space that's definitely needed over at the school. As far as construction goes, Steve is going to share a little bit more detail with you than I have, but I just wanted to go ahead and pop in a few photographs. As of Friday, this is what the site looked like. You can see a lot of activity, certainly on the site as well as around the building. We have the shell up, the structural steel has been laid, and we're doing some detailing with the precast walls that surround the gym. Another view, different angle, again shows you the masonry and the brickwork that already has taken place. Had a lot of contractors up there now in preparation for a school. There are steps that are being made to ensure the safety of the students as well as the faculty. That's always number one when we're on site and doing construction activity. So that has already been discussed with the contractor. They are mobilizing and preparing for Wednesday, the first day of school. And then this a little bit harder to see, just a little bit more of a detailed shot, gives you an idea of the structural steel that's already been laid. We're going to be following up with some roof deck material, as well as the roofing material itself. And then at some point in the very near future, the building will be enclosed, and we can start with all the finishes and so forth. We're right on track for completion, as I said, mid-October for that particular project. And as I said, really hasn't been too many glitches. Nothing out of the ordinary for construction, so proceeding right along. Next project I want to talk about is the Prairie Elementary School. If you remember, we're doing a very similar kind of addition over at that particular school on the southeast corner of the site you see in the orange over here. The connection, the building itself is a little bit more snug to the existing building. We didn't have to deal with windows and natural light into the classrooms that we're butting up against, so that's why we were able to take advantage of the close proximity of the addition onto the building. Something a little different, though, in this particular project. We have two areas of additional site work, and that would be on the lower left-hand corner. You could see that new site access drive. That is something that's not only serving as a construction entry, but also as a access to the hard surface play area. And that's where it is anticipated that cars, parents, and visitors will be parking when there is additional activities that's happening after school hours, like plays, or if there's some sporting event or something like that. That whole hard surface play area will be used as overflow parking, and really it's going to help alleviate the congestion that happens in the neighborhood and so forth. So there'll be a gate there during the course of the regular school day, so the kids could use that blacktop for play, hopscotch and whatever ball games and so forth that they have. And then on the upper right-hand side, the northeast side, you can see we have new parking. So we have about 20 new additional parking stalls, again, much needed for the staff, faculty, and visitors that are coming to the school. And then we crafted on the far end a turnaround. So again, nice way to separate parent and bus drop-off. Took advantage of the additional, real estate that we have on that end to alleviate some internal site congestion. Taking a look very quickly in more detail, you can see around the perimeter of the addition, we tried to keep a sort of a path, but instead of making just a really unfriendly angular shot from one hard surface play area to the next, we created a little bit more of a meandering path, and then populated the green space between that path and the building with some additional relatively maintenance-friendly landscape. So really it's wild grasses and so forth that could be easily maintained by Steve and his staff during the course of the year. From a construction standpoint, there hasn't been, it's certainly not to the same level of construction activity as we've seen over at Elmwood, but a lot of work is happening with the parking lots right now. Within another week or so, the parking lot as well as the construction entrance should be taken care of and be able to be used by the district and the staff. So this is what it looks like as of Friday again. A lot of dirt being pushed around. And then we were able, because of the fact that we got the construction contractor under contract, the contractor under contract, wow, early enough, what we did is we were able to take advantage of a few weeks in the summer here to run some utility lines through the building that to the point where we're eventually connecting the new addition to the existing building. We'll alleviate any kind of interruption as far as that goes then for the students and the staff during the course of the school year. So pretty positive stuff. We started in August. We're going to be wrapping up in mid-December on this particular project. Pretty similar cost of $1.7 million, and coincidentally, the square footage is almost identical to Elmwood at about 6,300 square feet. The difference is just a little bit in terms of the connection. We were able to cut down the square footage there because we're a little bit closer to the building. Steve is going to show you a few more shots of what's going on at these particular schools, so I'll take you through some more details. The last school that we want to talk about is in its infant stages, the conceptual design. There we go. The conceptual design phase. Like we have been doing with the other two projects, we took a look at the most pressing need, which in this particular case was a multi-purpose room, again, to get that separation between where the kids are eating and gym activities. Because of different factors, I don't necessarily think we need to go into all of them right now. It made the most sense to go ahead and move that cafeteria up adjacent to the gymnasium, and then take a look at how we can connect and reconfigure the main entrance. That whole you're familiar with Steeple Run, and it's really kind of an unusual geometry that we have to deal with over there. Matter of fact, it's unusual geometry not only in terms of the main entrance, but the main entrance in location to the main office and all the adjoining spaces, educational spaces. So as we take a look at how that cafeteria can fit and the connection that we have to provide, this is the configuration that we propose to Karen and her staff, as well as Mr. Mathis and Superintendent Bridges. It is roughly about 4,100 square feet, and in conjunction with the site work, which was another issue that was identified early on in the project and much need of consideration, we're looking at probably about $1.8 to $1.9 million project here. Reduced square footage compared to the other projects for sure, but more extensive site work, both in terms of trying to separate the parent and bus drop-off from each other, as well as provide additional parking and then detention on the site. Now, this particular school is unique from your other facilities in that it is an unincorporated area, so we are not going to be interfacing with the city of Naperville. We need to reach out to DuPage County. And for that reason, we honed in on a site plan almost immediately after we had the last board meeting. That was a question that did come up. And we are in the process of going through and talking with their planners and engineers to ensure that what we're providing over here is really going to be feasible, not only for you, but from their standpoint and the regulations that they make us follow. So want to point out again the separation of the parent and bus drop-off, really critical. You're going to see that both in this option number one, as well as the second option that we're getting to right now. We pretty much kept it intact. We figured we feel very comfortable with the solution that we've provided, again, for the safety of the students as they're coming and going from the school. Now, as we do when we tackle all these projects, we spend time in the buildings. We talk to the staff, the principals in particular, and we try to provide the best and most feasible option that makes the most sense. And really taking a look at the main office, the size of the spaces, and the location and proximity to the main entrance, there is a potential issue that we need to really consider and take a look at some point in the near future. Might need to be addressed, and because we're proposing an addition onto the building right now, we thought it'd be an opportune time to take a look at addressing some of those issues that came to our attention with regards to those proximity issues. To that end, we've gone ahead and looked at the cafeteria and what it would mean for the entire floor plan if we relocate the main office to the front of the, adjacent to the cafeteria and by the front entrance, and take a look at reconfiguring that so the flow of people in and out of the building can be more closely monitored, and we can reclaim or get some space some much needed space for the main office, and house some functions that, quite frankly, currently right now are tucked into closets and so forth. This is the configuration that we wound up with after having conversations, actually many conversations between Mr. Mathis, Karen, and Superintendent Bridges. You can see at the front over there the main entrance, pretty similar to what we did over at Prairie, where there is a security vestibule that visitors would have to check into the main office with. Then they can be discharged into the school once they have been cleared and monitored accordingly. All the functions, principal's office, conference room, small work area, and a little bit more appropriately sized health clerk office, as well as some additional storage and bathrooms are in that orange area in the main administration suite. We kept pretty much the cafeteria, the same configuration and size as it was right now. I would be remiss if I did not want to open it up for some questions that you might have between the two options, in the hope that we can get some direction from you to proceed with in deeper level of design. The square footage, which I did not say, is ironically for this particular addition compared to option number one, is 6,300 square feet, right in keeping with the other addition, right, that we're doing. The cost estimate as it stands right now, and again, this is just a conceptual cost estimate, is about $2.5 to $2.6 million. However, that always gets refined as we get farther and farther into the details of the project. The difference in terms of cost that you're seeing, just because it's the same square footage, we have more, but we have more site development that's going on in terms of separating out the bus traffic from the parent drop-off traffic, and we are going to have a lot more detention on this particular site because we are maxed out on what is allowable for impervious area.
Question? You go ahead.
So I appreciate the fact you guys are taking a look at the main entry now to reconfigure that, as opposed to coming back later. If we didn't do the main entry now, how much more expensive do you think it would be if we found out we had to come and do it later too? I mean, you got a number table of roughly $2.5 million.
Yeah, it would be far more than that because you're talking about having to remobilize all the contractors, and depending on when you do it, there's always the construction escalation factor that goes into it.
Plus the inconvenience to the staff twice.
Sure. Inconvenience to the staff, and to be completely upfront with you, there would be some additional, demolition of an interface that would have to take place, and you'd be doubling up on expenditures for tearing down some parts of the main entrance that you already had put back into place.
So in other words, we put in new work, and then have to come back and tear it out later to adjust it to the old work. So pay for twice for the same area.
That's never a good idea.
Never a good plan, no.
Right.
Kristen?
Can you tell me a little bit about the security update? I know you mentioned a little bit that it would update the security for the entry of the building.
Well, we do that as a matter of just solid, good professional practice. Whenever we take a look at the main entrances of buildings, times are different than when the buildings were certainly constructed. And we established a sort of a standard, I guess, if you will, or at least a benchmark when we did Mill Street several years ago. So as we went back in, we did the entrance and the main office over at Prairie. We used some of the same principles and the same thinking that we applied over at Mill Street to Prairie. We did the same thing over at Ranchview. And when we were doing some renovations of the kindergarten rooms, renovations of the main office and the band room over there. And then we thought it would be wise and appropriate because of the fact that we were looking at the cafeteria to look at the entry sequence here as well.
So the main thing is allowing for people to come into the building when they're cleared? Is that having a sort of a waiting area?
Well, it is a little bit of
Vestibule?
what we're proposing is a little bit of an expanded a secured entry vestibule, and then there is a transaction counter that the visitors would have to check in at which point, they'd have to announce what they were doing, and they couldn't get any farther into the building until people in the main office felt comfortable that, of what they were doing and when they were doing it, so. Pretty standard procedures, but it makes a lot of sense.
Any other questions? Susan?
Craig, just like when we did Central and the kids were in the school while the work was going on, could you address the safety that you put in place to keep our kids safe while your contractors are working?
Well, there's a whole host of things that we would need to do for sure. Right now, we're scheduled, depending on the direction that I received from the board tonight.
I meant at all the schools, like currently like at Elmwood and
Oh,
Prairie.
okay, as a matter of course, we
Yes.
have criminal background checks that all the contractors need to submit as part of the project. There is continual monitoring, additional monitoring on our part, but certainly on the district's end as well. That's strictly from a personnel standpoint. At no time when the students are in the building will contractors be allowed in the building to actually be in close proximity. So we do keep the construction activity separate, like we are over at Prairie, like we are over at Elmwood. We keep them separate from what's going on in the school proper. We change the entry locations so that, again, the students don't and the contractors don't have an opportunity of being in close proximity or engaging in any way, shape, or form. And then, of course, there's always continual monitoring that happens, not just by us, but by Mr. Mathis and his staff.
Any other question? Michael?
Reference this diagram. Are you able to tell me where this office space is being relocated from? And and then also, and Dan, you can answer this too, that's what I thought, what uses it would be appropriate for, because it looks a little, the rooms look small to be classrooms, but I heard, some stuff in closets, or, what were you looking at repurposing that with?
Yeah, this particular school is shy on resource areas. Those are the functions that are kind of tucked into closets and smaller spaces. I can assure you that it's already claimed. If as far as the ELL program is one of those. So there will be some classroom spaces, but there's for only 5 to 6 kids. There's also some additional office space. We're expanding one of the spaces so that there is more appropriately sized staff lunch area, and then we have a couple of additional itinerant offices that could serve as storage if for whatever reason some of those resources get relocated to other parts of the district. But right now, every single one of those spaces, I think there's about 8 of them right there, are called for a particular function.
And Mike, to your point, in terms of this particular addition, not just the multipurpose room, but also the front addition, I think I'll let Dan explain. I think the administrators are looking for the board's appetite on adjusting the scope of this project, not just from the what's going to take to have children go through and have multi-purpose room, a place to eat, and the lunch for all-day kindergarten all, but also doing these changes or enhancements to the entryway. So,
as Craig alluded to in his presentation, whenever we do any of this work at our sites, we look at other opportunities to overall site improvement. So you've seen some of that. We've addressed site concerns with both options here, but then also in terms of the proximity of where we're putting this, really allows us to, kind of take on some of the projects that we would see coming up anyways. Mm-hmm. It makes sense to us at this time rather than realizing additional cost if we came back to do that, to take advantage of doing it at this time. But I think where Craig and his team is at a point where they need some direction in terms of beginning to take their next steps in terms of design. So it'd be my recommendation that we take advantage of this site work that we're doing right now and expand the scope to include this.
So let me just make clear, we're not trying to approve a number at this point. We're trying to give direction if we would be agreeable as a board to increase the scope of this project.
That's correct.
Okay. And I think the difference, if we're in the 1.6 to 1.8.5 on the other multipurpose rooms, and this would be more, I think your number was 2.5 million?
Correct.
Okay, for this combined effort. Did somebody have some questions? Susan?
I do. Dan, could you address, because we already have money kind of in our capital budgets to pay for some of this, how can we afford both options?
Had Brad review the budget, and he's assured me that we have money within the budget to be able to do this.
Michael?
My only comment would be, I mean, I heard what you said, we're not approving this, but we're approving a direction, and I'm always hesitant to do that on a 10-minute briefing without any preparatory materials, and, oh, by the way, what do you think about throwing another $1 million into this? I personally am not ready to share an opinion. My gut feel is it sounds like a good idea, but I don't think it's always a wise thing just to go with your gut feel without any supporting data.
And I think, in full disclosure, Craig was good enough to come and talk about some of the, Craig and Steve were talking about the summer projects, and to have talked about this and not talk about the entryway would have seemed, as Dan just mentioned to me, it would have been kind of crazy just to come back later, so
Oh, to be
that's
clear,
why-
I appreciate the conversation.
Right.
But what I heard you asking us is, should we press
Well,
with
exactly.
this?
If everybody here said,
and that's
no
what I'm
way,
saying.
right.
No, I'm
right.
saying I think it's a good idea, but I also, for me personally, it's
Right,
too
you're not in
too
this
early
position,
to weigh in
and
on it.
I would agree with that. I haven't, that's why I was saying, did you say 2.5? Yeah, I wasn't even sure what the number was going to be, the
Yeah.
adjusted number. So I think, let me ask a question too, my question before we got on to this, this increased scope. I can see here whether, kind of either way for the entryway, there's a logical way for the community to use this room, because all of these spaces, all of these gym multipurpose room spaces are used all the time by the community. It's a very reasonable amount of money they charge. People use, it's very sought after space. So I can sort of logically see how people could use this space, new or old entryway. What I'm not sure that I saw on Prairie, for sure, would they have to snake through the whole building, or is there an outside door?
No, let me go back.
I just didn't see
It's
it.
another one of those opportunities where, based on its location, we're looking at site work. So, I'll let Craig speak to that.
Yeah.
I just,
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. There's just no way. There you go. So if you take a look at the bottom left-hand corner over there where it says new site access drive,
right,
that is for overflow parking. Actually, it's for parking for after-hours activities. So you get access from the street onto your site.
right,
And that's where all the cars will park.
Got
So
it.
at no point, if there's an assembly or some kind of community event
Right.
that is taking place in the gymnasium, the rest of the building can be locked down from the
so
gym.
there isn't,
then
literally,
you
there's
can
an
park-
entranceway right
Yep,
there.
yep,
Right there's an entranceway,
absolutely.
great.
Mhm.
I just don't,
New gym addition.
I'm sorry?
There's a door right there.
Oh, I see the.
Well, there's doors. Yeah, there's doors actually all around.
Yeah.
We have for emergency egress,
Great,
but
and there's
we're-
also, Elmwood has that same capability. then.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. That was
Great.
one of the number one thoughts when we were
Right.
putting this plan together.
Absolutely, thanks.
Now with Steeple Run, it's a different. It is a little bit different because the cafeteria, as well, is just a little bit. It's just a little bit. It's a little bit smaller space, and so by locating it next to the gym, we're able to open up that cafeteria or the multipurpose space to the gymnasium and create a bigger space there. But again, if all of the space that's required is, the square footage that we have for the multipurpose room for whatever activity, we can close that off from the rest of the gym, and nobody will have access to the rest of the school.
The space that you're showing up there, the adjacent space after you come out and head east from the multipurpose room, just for lack of a better term, is that corridor space or is that usable space?
That's corridor space.
Just circulation space.
Yeah.
So could you go to your next scheme?
Far more efficient because now that corridor space actually serves to get access to the main office.
So it's sort of a dual purpose. So it's part of the equation is we're building. If we go with the first round, we're putting space in there, but the space is really not really. We're not really driving any benefit from it. Correct.
All it is access to the cafeteria.
All right. So for a little bit more money, and I realize money's a relative term in this case. We're getting some benefit for the office space itself, and we're also capturing some more utilization for the space that you're going to have to put on there anyway.
At some point, you're going to have to, and it's
Yeah.
probably sooner than later. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. How long before you would have like a better adjusted cost estimate on it as you moved?
Well, the cost that I gave you right now is a conceptual cost estimate. It's based on square footage. We haven't elevated the building or looked into any of the details. That's pretty standard for where we usually are at this particular point. That number gets refined at every step of the process. So if you elect for us to proceed and at least to look at this a little bit more in greater detail, we will refine our cost accordingly. They go up, they go down, and they keep going like that.
They go down better, right?
I hear you. And the trend so far has been with all the projects that the cost does come down a little bit. So I would expect that to continue. The one wild card is the county. And
I understand the county, and by the county you mean what they're making us do with the water on
Correct.
the site, correct?
Correct.
Which would also drive some of the parking needs. I mean, if we don't need all that parking, or
yeah. Well, we definitely need all the parking because they are shy in the front.
Sure.
I mean, we determined that with the staff. So we haven't given really any more parking than was absolutely needed. The other big concern was separating those buses and the small buses as well as the big buses from the parents. So that's what this configuration allows us to do. Now, one of the things that we are exploring is for stormwater detention is use of permeable pavers, so it serves as double duty. We don't have to provide as much detention if we have those, and there's a trade-off between having a certain quantity of permeable pavers and the amount of compensatory storage that you have to have for stormwater. That's what we have to balance right now, and that affects the cost. So we'll do that as part of our due diligence on the project.
And you're planning to match the exterior facade just in general terms. We're not going to deviate or add different materials to this to make it more expensive. We're going to kind of keep the same.
There's not much of an image on this building.
I realize that.
And so we are looking at all of our options. We're trying to keep those open at this point.
Yeah, but within a reasonable budget parameters.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're asking for the board's indulgence to go ahead with this office area, which is something I can support. I think it's also reasonable that we not overly dress the building and we keep the costs in line for what we need to do. And I appreciate a good-looking building just as much as anybody else does, but I also want to be money conscious about it.
Understood.
What is the overall time frame that I think, Dan, you're looking for? Craig, what are we looking for now that we understand the scope addition, if you will?
Mm-hmm. Well, ideally, we would like to be out to bid by Christmas, probably January at the latest.
Mm-hmm.
And we need about 3 months to go ahead and prepare all the documents. Actually, that's on the short end. We'd like to be out to bid, though, to capture the best pricing that we can for the district. That means that we'd be coming back to you at the latest with February with a recommendation on which contractor to award the construction contract to. So that being said, working backwards, the sooner the better for us, I guess. Certainly at the latest would be next.
And what
next
new
month.
I was going to say, what new information could you come back to the board with by the September 3rd or 19th meeting that may help them? And part of it, we could perhaps talk to them about how we envision using some of that former office space.
We could talk. I could certainly label the existing spaces we weren't going to tear down walls with, so you could get a better idea of what goes in there. But without getting into any sort of detailed, drawing phase, it's going to be hard to pin down the cost even further. Between these both options. At these early stages, we go on a cost per square foot basis, and we look in our database with our estimating department to make sure that it's accurate and reflective of what's going on in the current bidding and climate.
I think certainly understanding the enhancements to the space, either educationally or administratively, would be a great start, right, to understand what we do with that space. So the administrators can do that by one of the September meetings to be able to keep without delaying things. So
Sure.
I think does anybody else have any comments? That would be a good start, right? Okay. Yes.
I just want to say thank you because my child attended Steeple Run and I saw the need for this as well. And again, the price coming down would be great, but I think that the line of the line of sight, the safety for the students, the moving all that ELL that I saw going on in the LRC out into back into those offices is all positive. The cutting off this area between the bus drop off and the parent drop off, which people like myself when I was new to the school didn't know and drove through that way, is just more. It's just more efficient and safe for the children, and so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Very good.
Thanks, Greg.
All right. I think Steve has a number of other photographs to share with you about what's going on.
What
in
he
the
did on
district,
his
so-
summer vacation. Thank you, Craig. Thank you very much, Craig. Good to
Okay.
see you.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you later.
Well, I know you've been outside a lot. But somewhere I read that it was rainy in June and things were slowed down. I don't see any rain on your face. It looks like bright sunshine. No, I know. Lots been going on. Thanks again, Craig.
So long, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Craig. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Well, some of the projects don't lend themselves as well to pictures as others. So before I get started here, I'd like to bring mention to the fact that I don't have any pictures of the roofing that we did at Central or Lincoln.
You never bring the good stuff.
Yeah, you know.
I didn't bring pictures of
flashy stuff,
the
real
rooftop
shiny stuff.
HVAC units that we changed at North or Central. And there's no pictures of the heating and cooling piping that we changed in the tunnels and the first floor ceiling at North High School. And you won't see any pictures of the more than 400 other projects that we did this summer that were a little smaller.
Fair enough, fair enough.
But if you were at North last year for graduation, or this year for graduation, this is what you would have seen for the North press box. And about a week or so later, if I could have the next slide, this is what you saw.
Well, you know, down to basics.
There we go. And we started construction or remodeling it. And the next slide will show you as it went up. It's kind of hard to see with the black paper on the outside, but the roof is now flatter and more secure and stronger. And this is what it looks like today.
Wow.
And you'll see there's a safety railing around the upper part. And in the next slide, you can see that on the right-hand side there's a roof ladder. It goes up through a roof hatch, so now they'll be able to videotape from the roof, which they were never able to do before. And as you look at this, there's 3 levels of viewing. People can sit at the front counter and see the field. People can stand behind them and see the field. And this other area straight in is raised up 2 steps where you can stand and look over all the people in front of you. And there's a counter along the back where they'll serve all the food and the goodies. And if you're standing up there, the next picture will show what it looks like.
Wow. Awesome.
And if you want to take a trip up to the roof, you'll have a view like this.
Oh, wow.
So that's the press box, and it's completed. I don't believe there's hardly anything left as far as punch list to do on there.
Ready for football season.
Ready to go. Ready to go. Part?
Did you do all that with your staff?
No,
That was,
that was an outside contractor. Yep, outside contractor. These are all. These are pretty much all.
Busy doing those other.
Yeah, we did the other 400 projects.
We'll just take pictures.
No, we didn't even do all those. But the next slide you'll see is we added a new ticket booth that matches the other 2. That should be, they're supposed to put the window in tomorrow or Thursday. So that's coming along. And we finished off the rest of the ornamental fence along the south end of the field at North High School. And the next slide is the band room.
Oh.
The band room had a
Doesn't look
recessed
like a
floor.
band room yet.
Yeah, the band room had a recessed floor in it, and the department wanted those floors leveled. We had done the music room several years ago, but we put a wood deck in there, And the problem was when the kids walk around, you'd hear the echo and stuff. So we tore that out, and we did the same thing. We filled it in with styrene and poured concrete on top.
Awesome.
And the sound panels along the back, we pulled all that off and redid the back wall with drywall and all new acoustics throughout both the music and band room. That we worked with a specialty company that deals with acoustics. They have a engineered plan for where each size and diagram goes. And if I could see the next slide, you'll see what it looks like. You can see the different size panels and their different shapes. There's also drop-ins up in the ceilings. And this is the band room. And this is the music room, or chorus room. So they came out real nice. Got compliments this morning from the band people. They said the acoustics are just wonderful. So as long as it works, that's the big thing. So they're happy with it. So one of the other projects that we were working on up at North was the science labs. This is the physics lab. There's a physics lab and a physics-chemistry lab combination. So all new casework. We took the flooring out. They wanted to keep the industrial look, so they're going with the concrete floor. And it's got a unistrut framing around. It's kind of a steel square strut that's hung from the ceiling, so the students can hang their projects and stuff off of that. So it's an open ceiling look. It's all painted dark blue up there, new lighting, new electrical, new plumbing, all up and running.
Did you polish the floor, or did you just leave it raw?
We left it raw. So far, that's what they wanted. We'll see. We cleaned it, but that room had asbestos tile in it, so it was abated, and the company that did the abatement did a pretty good job of cleaning. But no, we haven't polished it yet.
Because I've seen some success in other sectors where they've gone back in and polished existing concrete. Looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Are they easier to maintain then?
Yeah, it's easier to clean.
Right. Yeah. As of right now, we just wash.
In fact, there's a local store here that I can point you to. You can go look at.
Okay.
It's really good.
Okay. And the next slide, this is Steeple Run. We replaced the playground at Steeple Run.
Oh, wow.
And some new playground equipment. Next slide, please. This is Ranch View. At Ranch View, we replaced all the carpeting in the LRC and the hallways adjacent to the LRC. So that was a pretty good-sized project. Everything had to come out, and it turned out very nice. So, up at Jefferson, we had two large Kiwani boilers that were from 1972 or 3. They were rather large.
You decided they needed to go away?
We decided they needed to go away. We've been getting rid of all those as we work at it every year. And they were replaced with 4 air-cooled benchmark condensing boilers, high energy efficient. The nice thing about this is that if it's a 40-degree day, we may only need one of those to run.
Oh,
If it's a
awesome.
30 or 20-degree day, 2 of them may run. And they'll alternate which one starts first. So you don't burn, you're not always starting the same boiler the first time. So when it's 10 below zero, you may have all 4 running. So they will pay for themselves probably in 2.5 years. We should have recover. So,
Great.
and that's all the piping and insulation that comes out of the back of them.
It's a Christmas card.
So it's like a spaghetti bowl. So. Next project was, this is over at Washington. We went in and we replaced all of the ceilings in the hallways and the LRC. The normal grid work tends to get rusty over years, and the 2x4 panels that you see in a lot of the schools that was popular 30 years ago, they tend to sag and warp. These are all 2x2, similar to this, that gives it a nice, sharp appearance, improve the lighting in there. There's high energy efficient lights, and you can see a couple more pictures of how the hallways turned out. So that was Washington. This is the press box, the baseball press box over here at Central. That's a thin brick going on right now. That was at about 9 o'clock this morning. So by today's end, I would imagine they pretty much have that completed. Goes on very fast. And then they come back and mortar in. This is another picture of Prairie. I took it took it Friday, I think, showing where they cut out for the new parking, expanded parking. And then we have some pictures of Elmwood. This is when they were pouring the walls for Elmwood, the foundation walls. The footings are in, and they're putting foundation walls in. The next slide will show one of the first trucks coming in with precast concrete. This is one of the first buildings we've put in with precast concrete. So you can see the next slide will show the precast going up, and then there's a couple more slides of the precast being set. And within one day, you have most all of a building. They had to come back to set one more panel, but that was it. So from there, we've gone to the roof trusses being on, and there's some roof decking up there. As of this morning, they finished putting all the roof deck on. So next slide, please. There's just some different shots of, that's the back side of the stage and the outdoor storeroom for the tractor and lawn equipment. Next slide. And that's the storage room and office is on this end. And you can see most of the roof deck up there. Next slide. The roof deck on. This is inside facing the storeroom. And the next slide is this morning. They were pouring the concrete floor, and they were hauling the concrete in those buggies from the cement truck to the concrete floor under the stage. So that was as of this morning. And that floor is poured. The floor to the entry connecting hallway was poured this morning. So, and the floor to the stage, or not to the stage, but to the storeroom and office was poured last week, and they were blocking up the wall this morning to separate those two spaces. So, and that's where we're at.
Awesome. You have a lot to write about what you did on your summer vacation. You have a lot to write about on the first day of school.
Just if I could comment, a lot of what you saw, especially in some of the more finished areas, very impressive in terms of their look. But I'd like to share with you Bob was just sharing with me recently about reports from staff at North, for example, and the work that was done in the music rooms and how the improvement in the acoustics have really, changed how the kids are able to hear what they're able to sing. And Bob was sharing with me that Nick Jansen's reporting that the kids are hearing parts of their singing that they've not been able to hear before. So a lot of when we do this, we look at it on how it improves what we're doing educationally and programmatically. So I think just the aesthetics and how it ends up looking is just the side benefit of it. But great work by Steve and your staff all summer. You had a lot of, as you said, well over 400 projects going on. Great job.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve.
And Steve, just one more note. The upgrades in energy and so forth, those are not to be underestimated in this economy. I think the fact that you're doing it and you're being foresight and very thoughtful in the planning of it, that's a good use of the money that you've been entrusted with. And I realize you said a lot of piping and so forth. All that's important.
It is.
And it makes the buildings last longer, and it helps us be more financially efficient in the future.
Yeah, well, the addition at Elmwood and Prairie, and I'm sure Steeple Run will too, have all LED lights on it. Yeah. So, we try to be ahead of the game.
Right.
So,
Thanks so much, Steve.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, Susan.
I have a question for Dan. Dan, what are our plans to invite the community in to see some of these improvements, since it's really their buildings?
As soon as we get closer to completion on some of these dates, we'll work with staff at both all of the sites and then with Steve's group to ensure that we have an opportunity to bring the community in and show them off.
That's
Absolutely.
great.
And if I could, since a nice connection into the community, would call to attention for the community September 18th and 19th, our next series of Future Focus conversations. And scheduled for discussion during those sessions are facilities. And our architects, Craig Siepke, and others with his firm will be highly involved with our facilitating team in planning that presentation. We envision at this point using those 2 sessions as the beginning of a master facility planning process where we engage our community for conversations about our facilities and looking forward. So we're looking forward to those 2 sessions. Encourage members of the community to participate in those. Again, September 18th, 7 o'clock at Naperville Central High School. And then on Thursday, September 19th, at Grace United Methodist Church over on Gartner, beginning at 8:30. So thank you.
Okey-doke, sorry. Graduate survey is next, 6.05.
Okay, Assistant Superintendent for Assessment and Analytics, Tim Waranga is going to come to lead the presentation and discussion, and this is going to be a survey of our 2011 graduates 18 months after graduation. In addition to the PowerPoint that Tim will be showing, the board has some backup material provided for you. So I'll turn it over to Tim to lead the conversation.
Thanks, Dan, and appreciate the opportunity to share this information. This has been a process of many years that we've gone through of creating this survey process, and we'd like to present to you the second results we've had from the 18-month survey. The outcomes we would like for this presentation is to, first of all, just highlight the outcomes from the graduate survey and the important aspects of that, and then also to talk to you a little bit about our conclusions and our next steps in that process. Here's the outline of what we'd like to talk about. I'll first of all go through the survey process itself, and then we've kind of framed the outcomes or the results of the survey in terms of these types of questions that the questions answer. Where are our graduates in terms of our district mission? Who are our graduates? Who helped them along the way? And then also what helped them along the way, and how did they feel about their journey with us? In a way, this is kind of an interesting transition. Just as part of what we're doing, the board wanted us to be looking at our graduates and where they are and what they've been doing. And so back in 2010, we started the process of doing an exit survey with our graduates. And so we've got the data. When the students actually graduate, the class of 2010 through the most recent one, we've surveyed those upon exiting right at the end of their career at the high schools. Upon surveying them, we also then look to finding out a little bit about who then the leaders are in that group in order to then take a look at them 18 months later. So at the 18-month point, we surveyed the class of 2010, and then just this past winter, surveyed the class of 2011, and looked at kind of advocating for getting the information back from them as to how they were doing in college or their careers, and then trying to basically use those student leaders that from when they graduated to advocate for getting more student involvement from those students. So even social media was used to help drum up some support, get others involved, to the point where we had about close to 400 respondents in this 18-month survey. Then also we also had a contact information that we had solicited from them upon graduation that we used, that School Perceptions used to get some of that information. And then as a follow-up that we'll be doing in a few years, we'll be doing a 5-year follow-up survey for each of those classes as well. So each graduating class will participate in 3 surveys: an exit survey, an 18-month survey, and then a 5-year survey. And the first survey for 5 years will occur in the fall of 2014 with that class of 2010. This first slide, as part of the data, shows us where our graduates are today in terms of the class of 2011. Very similar, by the way. The data presented here is also very similar to the data that was from 2010. This shows that 96% of our students are list either a 4-year or 2-year college as where they are. Now notice there's some overlap in the data. They can actually, for instance, maybe be at a vocational college and then also at a different college, or many of the 2-year college folks also potentially may be transferred to another a 4-year university, for instance. So there is some overlap in the data there. Just so you know, it's very similar to what they predicted they would have upon graduation in 2011. 94% anticipated that they would be at a 2-year or 4-year college, and here we see that it's 96%, so a little bit of an increase from that they anticipated. This next part talks about our mission, and as we really look to who our students are, the fulfillment of the mission, this is really where the rubber hits the road in terms of our students. We know that the mission is truly something that we expect as an outcome upon graduation, and to see that lived out through our students is really the fulfillment of that. So that this really does highlight the importance of the mission for our students, not only in the past, but as you have seen in the exit surveys upon exiting. Please note also that they seem to appreciate it more as time goes on. That in comparing this to the response from when they graduated in 2011, there was an increase of anywhere from 0.1 to 0.4 on each of these in terms of how they responded after time had passed. The next question that we're trying to answer is who helped them get there? In this slide, you can see that parents still fulfill the most significant influence in our students in terms of influencing their life and after school and high school. It does also point out that we see a large percentage of students who actually turn to a staff member for assistance in that regard. They can answer multiple answers to this. So you can see that in terms of our high school staff, there's a total of, it could be some overlap here, but 34% for high school counselor and 33% for high school teacher. And it's interesting to see that those students do turn to other people to get assistance in that area. Also, we asked what helped them get there. Now, this I want to preface this section by saying that this one we're going to work on seeing if we can modify this in the future in terms of how it's done and presented. Part of this is, if you look at these, you'll see a kind of an emphasis in core areas as part of this data. Part of the difficulties with how this is done is that a student may not have participated in a certain area here. For instance, maybe they didn't participate in music, but they were still asked to respond to music. And so we're a little uncertain when we as a cabinet have looked at this as to how that might influence their response and how they would rate that. So you can see this, what is a very interesting point, though. Almost all of these areas, in this slide and the next one, actually went up since their graduating data. Some, in fact, in the core areas, some went up very significantly in terms of what they saw as that influence from when they graduated. There is an important missing piece here. Comm Arts is not listed on either this slide or the next one. That actually was part of the review process as part of how we rewrote the survey 2 years ago, and we'd like to rewrite it back to the other way because in essence what you'll see in a few minutes are some skills that we interviewed students about or surveyed them on, and that was actually seen as the heart of what Comm Arts was about. So Comm Arts was taken out of this part. We will in the future most likely put that back in. It was actually part of how they were originally surveyed. So again, part of what we will do is look at this data, also the information here, and see how we might be able to redesign how this is done in the survey. The next part about what helped our students get there. As you look at this slide, it talks about some of the skills that we see as very important. Again, this is the slide I was referring to, that many of these skills were seen as comm arts skills that then were influenced into the other areas in terms of how literacy impacts what we do in other areas as well as some other ones in terms of things like fitness and wellness. And so you can see on this that there's, again, some of the skills that we would want our students to graduate with. There's a high appreciation for what the schools did there. As you can see, there's one significant outlier there as the personal finance at the bottom. And that might be influenced by, again, maybe we would look at, as the schools look at their enrollment in different classes and coursework as to how that's impacting that score. And then the next slide talks about kind of that overall attitude toward their schooling experience afterwards. So how did our students feel about getting there? And if you look at this slide, you notice that 86% of our students were either satisfied or very satisfied with their experience, which was a good indicator that the Naperville schooling experience, K-12, is something that many of these students felt was preparing them for that next step, whether it would be college or careers. We'd like to see if in the future we might be able to come up with a little more nuance in terms of the career piece of this rather than just the college piece with this 18-month survey. And I do believe that will come out more in the 5-year survey as part of that process. So in conclusion, part of what we want to emphasize is that there's no single data point that should drive the improvement process, but that this is something that in sharing with the schools. In fact, I've already gotten some responses from our principals in terms of they're looking at this data and responding to it and seeing for areas where they might want to work with the staff. But we want to also gather other additional data, such as departmental data, that might help us with that process to give multiple measures in terms of how our graduates do. Next steps will also be for us to take a look in reviewing and revising with school perceptions, the survey itself, to also take a closer look at maybe somehow those demographic pieces might play into it. We don't get a lot of demographic data with this. We don't ask the students for it as part of it, and maybe how we might be able to get a deeper analysis of this data if we were able to tie some deeper demographic information to it. And that would allow us for a little more analysis of the patterns due to the demographics. Welcome your questions on the graduate survey.
Susan.
Do we have any contextual information for this to benchmark against other districts? Is a 3.34 great? I mean, it looks good on its own, but is there any results that we can look at?
We do not. School Perceptions runs this for several other organizations, other high schools and districts. We do not, aren't provided their data. I'll be honest, I don't believe we've ever asked for it, so we could ask for maybe some summary data to get that kind of context. Because it's true also, kind of you'll see attitudinally, different groups of students will be different as well. Maybe have the same experience and be different, and that would be nice to put in a broader perspective.
Yeah, I just think, 86%, I saw that when I was looking through it for preparation. 86 satisfied or very satisfied seems like, you're not going to find 86% of people
Agreeing on anything.
agreeing on anything.
Yeah, right.
But it's terrific. It's terrific, but do other schools see a 90%?
Right,
so
right.
we might,
No, that's a good point.
Okay, good. We'll ask for that.
Excuse me, Stephen was next. Saw Stephen's hand first.
For the graduation survey, when the students are seniors, every student takes that. Is that correct?
Yeah, they in essence what they do is you don't get 100%, but it's pretty close. So like during that last week to 2 weeks, students are given cards to go ahead and go into the system and respond, and then they do a lot of follow-up work to make sure that they get a high level of response. With this survey, since it's graduates, they fill out some information on it about contact information, and so school perceptions then will contact them to see if there's an update to an email or something to see if they can get as many responding to this as possible.
And then how many replied to the, 18-month for the 2011?
It was just over 390.
Okay.
So.
What percentage of that did you say already? I'm sorry.
No, I did not. So that's good. That's approximately 35 to 40% of the graduating class.
The Huskies could have done better.
I guess.
That'd be my daughter's class.
and
Those juniors in college could have done a little better on that.
Just in terms of surveying, though, that's actually what we would consider a good response rate when you try to do something outside of a context.
Oh, okay.
So,
that's interesting.
Yeah. It did take a little bit. I mean, we were not satisfied with the initial response, so we did take the time to go back to school perceptions to work with them on several different methods of drumming up more support to get a larger pool.
Was there any sort of like incentive program or anything like that?
For the 18 months?
Yeah.
Only, we find Facebook to actually be a good contact where people, I think they saw the incentive as reconnecting, kind of like you would for a reunion. And so that was kind of a good incentive point.
Yeah.
Donna.
On the slide where you have how our students felt about getting there, this is the one that has the 86%. It was just a couple back. You had mentioned that like K-12 with this show, I think you had said something about how like K-12, and really the way this is worded, we're talking about high school experience, correct?
Yes.
So is there a way that we can also look at their junior high experience, like, asking back if they felt like their junior high experience prepared them?
Yeah, because
as well.
And that is something that, I work with the high school principals on this, and we might want to take a look at how we can phrase it to be a little more K-12 oriented.
Or I like the way it's written. I just think that we need to look at the junior high point too to see how that.
I think it'd be interesting even to do like one year.
Austin, I'm going to interrupt you just real quick. Can you make sure that when you're going to speak, you bring your mic? Thank you.
Sorry.
So we can all hear you. Thank you.
But it'd be really interesting to get, like, as a high schooler, how did your junior high experience prepare you for even high school?
Right.
Because, like, I know, that'd be pretty cool and interesting, too. I'm sure you don't want to do tons of surveys, but that may be something to look into.
Well, yeah, that would be good alignment, too, to see how they're, from level to level, their responses.
I just think that this speaks to our high school experience, this 86%, which is wonderful, as Susan pointed out, but I'd be interested in seeing what they thought about junior high.
No. Serious, yeah.
Well, I just, as a cabinet, when we were looking at this last week, we had a fairly robust conversation about how we can use this. And we talked also a little bit about how this survey provides one of those potential data points for us that was mentioned frequently during one of our future focus conversations about how do you define student success. And as you looked at some of the things that we did survey on and what the community told us on how they would like to define success, you saw personal growth, long-term growth, you saw long-term success, strands of the mission statement, all were captured here. But we're interested in also capturing more. So one of your points, one of the data points we'd be interested in looking at, how does data differentiate from a student who was with us kindergarten through 12th grade and somebody who maybe came in partially through high school. So there's a lot of things that we're interested in trying to work with Tim and work with the high schools on designing that gives us some really good, robust data. So that's a good tool for us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Okie doke. And the ever-popular principal evaluation overview.
Ever so popular. Exactly 1 year ago at our August board meeting last year, Bob and Kitty, Bob Ross, Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education, Kitty Ryan, Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education, introduced the Board of Education to the new evaluation process we're using with our principals and assistant principals in the district based on changes in law. So they're going to kind of update you, or first of all review for you that process, and then update you on how it went and some thoughts about moving forward. So turn it over to Kitty and Bob.
Make sure I'm on here. Here we go. Very happy to present to you this evening. And what we'd like to do is kind of take you through the principal, where we've been and where we're going in terms of principal evaluation. It's really a central role for Bob and for myself, and one that we take very, very seriously, and one that we enjoy very, very much. As always, it's built around our 3 layers of school of leadership in our building, in our district. And as we look particularly at principal evaluation, academic press is the central focus for that. Tonight, what we'd like to do, if we could go to the next slide, is to review the process for principal evaluation as it existed last year, talk a little bit about what we learned through that process, and then some revisions that we've made and some changes to improve our service to principals in that area. In terms of where we've come from, as we know, the 2010 Performance Evaluation Reform Act mandated changes for us. And in fact, last year, those changes were implemented following the new rules. And the basic change for us, or the basic addition for us, was that student growth piece. We had always evaluated principal practice based on the ISLIC standards. We're going to talk about those briefly in just a moment. But last year we added that idea of student growth and student growth metrics. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Bob.
Thank you, Mrs. Ryan. Kitty's right. We have 2 main parts in the principal evaluation. We say principal evaluation throughout this presentation. We really mean principal and assistant principal. What happens is Kitty evaluates the elementary principals. The elementary principals evaluate their own assistant principals. I evaluate the secondary principals. They, in turn, evaluate their own assistant principals. We're just going to say principal up here, so we don't have to say and assistant principal 52 times. In each of those cases, what happens is the work of the professional is reviewed in this area of professional practice and in the area of student growth. The professional practice piece, next slide please, is based on these standards right here, the Illinois Performance Standards for School Leaders. A moment ago, Kitty mentioned the ISLIC standards. We used to have a set of standards that leaders of schools in Illinois were expected to follow, actually not just Illinois, the area. There's a gentleman named Dr. Joe Murphy, a professor for Vanderbilt. He's come out, he's worked with our administrative staff a few times. He helped to develop those standards. Then when those standards were revised, he helped to develop these new standards, the Illinois Performance Standards for School Leaders. Dr. Murphy also helped to develop something called the VALED, which is a survey tool taken by principals, the principal's evaluators, and teachers in a building. And those standards, or that survey is based on these standards. So the questions are connected very closely to these standards. So when we talk about professional practice, we're talking about those things that a principal does every day. And they do millions of things a day, right? But most of them, honestly, can be put under one of these 6 umbrellas. These standards do a nice job of tying together the work that our principals do. Next slide, please. So as Kitty and I try to assess, and as the principals for their APs try to assess the work that's being done in the area of professional practice, here's what we try to look at. We look at the work in the 6 standards, and we try to look at the VALED that the principal fills out for herself, that we fill out for the principal, and that the teachers fill out for that principal. We also look at the 2 formal observations that we do of the principals. For years, people in chairs like this have observed principals informally. We go to their buildings. We might go to a home and school meeting, might visit with them and walk with them into classrooms. But it's been it's been informal. By law, under PIRA and under our evaluation system, we've instituted formal observations, much like a building principal would do with a classroom teacher. And so we're in position to do that same kind of thing. So as we're in there, we're looking for information about their work against these 6 standards. So that helps us to gather information. And the other way is the principals set professional practice goals related to these 6 standards and especially to their school improvement plan. And we, the evaluators, work with the principals to monitor their progress toward those goals. And when we have our evaluation conferences, when we meet along the way, that's our chance to check in and see how they're doing in their goals, which are so connected to the standards, it gives us a chance to talk about those. The next part is the student growth part. And I don't know if I highlighted. The professional practice that we just talked about is worth 75% of one's evaluation. The student growth piece is worth 25%. Next frame, please. So what we did in this past year, and what we'll do again this year, is we work with the principal to identify achievement targets, again, aligned to the building's school improvement plan. The school improvement plan is what drives things at each of our 22 schools. Okay? Everyone has to be on the same page. The school improvement plan is that page. So it's logical and appropriate that a principal's goals are connected closely to the school improvement plan. All right? And we also work with them not just to identify goals and targets, but metrics that we're going to use and that we did use to measure that growth. After 1 year of doing the evaluation this way, we have some lessons that we've learned.
We really learned quite a bit this year in this new process. One of the things that we learned is, in fact, the new standards really are a very effective framework for evaluation, and that, as Bob mentioned, it's very closely connected, as were the ISLIC standards, to the actual work of the principal. We also learned that the staff appreciated the opportunity to go through the VALED and to respond to their view of their principal's leadership. And for us, it was a great place for us to have some very rich conversations with our principals around what did their staff think about their performance, especially related to our standards. We found that the two formal observations, although we were in those buildings a great deal, but those two formal observations we found very valuable as well because they were really connected to their principal's goals. So it wasn't just a random occurrence that we were seeing them lead a staff meeting. The staff meeting that we saw them lead was directly connected to their goals. It gave us another data source as we talked about their performance. We also found that the strong alignment between the principal evaluation and the school improvement goals made that process better. They were always aligned to the school improvement goals, but this was even a stronger link. It was really that school improvement goal or goals were the kickoff in terms of how their principal framed both professional practice goals and their assessment goals. And we also found that the formal structure of the evaluation process, especially with those student metrics, really kept the student at the center of the process and constantly drove the conversation back to how were students doing, how was the principal's work supporting students. So those were some important lessons that we learned in this year, and hopefully we're going to use those. We will use those as we go forward.
As we reviewed the evaluation process last year, we also identified some lessons we learned. We think we have some opportunities, some places where we need to improve. The student growth portion of the evaluation posed some challenges for us, including some requirements placed on us by our own instrument, but also by law. The evaluations must be signed, sealed, and delivered, have to be complete by March 1st. It's important to us that we do a good job of measuring student growth during the term of the evaluation. And that's a pretty tight time period to get in pre-testing, good work with students, and post-testing in enough time for us to write evaluations and have them finished for all 22 principals by March 1st. There's not too much we can do with those deadlines. So those are the deadlines, and that's how we're set up. But that's a concern for us. The scoring system that we had devised for the evaluation document was successful, but we think it can be better, and we hope that we've improved it for this year's model. And we need to find more genuine connections between the work and the job description that some of our secondary assistant principals do and the student growth targets. The work that they do is absolutely connected to student learning. A lot of it's behind the scenes work, maybe some longer lead time, and doesn't always mesh real well with this evaluation model. But it's the evaluation model that we're using, and we need to do a better job of making those connections. We're going to strive to do that this year. We do have a couple of changes that we're making for the coming year, 2013-14 evaluation year. This gets a little technical, but only a rating instead of a rating and a point value, which we assigned in this past year, will be issued for each leader for each of the 6 standards. We think this is going to make the system easier to understand and explain. The way we did it last year, I took a principal and I assigned a rating for standard number 1, and the rating was excellent or proficient or so on, but there was also a point value. That point value was meant to clarify and to allow us to evaluate things better. In some cases, we think it actually had the opposite effect. So we're going to remedy that. And the way that the professional practice rating and the student growth rating, the 75% and the 25% are combined, we're going to improve that to change the way that we do it to involve less rounding. Again, by assigning point values and then rounding them off and then combining, we think we can get a truer read on the rating that we're attempting to give by doing it this new way. So we're going to make that change right away.
And so we're ready to launch the principal evaluation system for this year. We'll start, our goals have to be written by all of our principals by October 1st, so we're ready to begin that process. We'll again do all the things that we talked about in the first year, especially around the school improvement process being a central focus for us. And then again, at the end of the school year, we'll take a look and see how we did and see what we can do to continually, is going to be a continual improvement process for us around this particular task. And so we'll take a good look and see how we can do it in an even improved way next year. So thank you.
Are there any questions that we can answer for you?
Sue.
How did you train to do this?
How did we train for this? Well, we trained. By law we had to pass a certification process through the state of Illinois, and so we did that.
Okay.
It was very rigorous. It took many hours of. It's actually given to us online, but it took many hours to do that. We've also attended trainings with the ROE. And we've studied the law ourselves and spent a great deal of time in developing the instrument that we use.
So the instrument that you used, did you see strands across, these outstanding administrators, these outstanding principals, and maybe ways that you hadn't seen before that you could help nurture the growing principals?
Yes.
Yes, we're fortunate. Our principals understand that as good as they are, everyone can always be better, and they are committed to continuously improving. So when we sit with the principal and talk with them about how they're doing in a certain area, they're not offended or worried if we say, but here's there, let me give you some feedback on this. And they crave that. And I think the structure of this and our observations and the other data points, again, much like a teacher might work with a student, it gave us the opportunity to sit with that principal and provide that feedback. And sometimes it was things that I went into the office and I might have expected. And sometimes it was things that were a little bit surprising, and that gave us a chance to follow up on that. So when Kitty talked about the rich conversations earlier, that's what we're talking about. Nice, rich conversations that are not just nice to have, but we think help to make the principal a better principal.
And so the principals go through the same training so that they can do this for the assistant principals?
Yes, our principals do it so that they can do it with assistant principals. They also have to do a whole other set of training so that they can evaluate teachers. So they have quite a rigorous process to go through.
Without a school name and a principal, would you know which school it was? Like, I'd love to see kind of what it looks like.
You mean the training?
No, like one of the reviews, but I don't want the principal's name or the school if it would give it away. You know what I mean? Yeah, mock-up kind of thing. I think it would be really
Of the
interesting.
summative evaluation process that we
and
use?
that would just be really
What we'll do is
interesting.
we can share with you the tool itself and then kind of go from there. And
Okay,
Okay.
that'd be great. Thank you.
I think it's great that the teachers got to play a part in the evaluation process, and it sounds like they enjoyed it and provided effective feedback. I'm interested, I know some of the sort of parallel where you have students evaluate teachers, that often the student feedback jives with an evaluator's view of a teacher. How did you find that to be in terms of the teachers' evaluations? Was that similar to your own, or were there?
Well, we completed one for each principal. The principal completed one, and the staff did.
Okay.
And what I found almost uniformly is the principal was hardest on themselves. They rated themselves lowest of the three, and that very often we rated our performance rating for the principal was similar to the staff's. Or maybe sometimes in the middle, or sometimes the staff was higher, so that kind of varied. But typically, we found that the principal was hardest on themselves for that. So it was a great place for us to start a conversation about how their teacher viewed their practice and how their staff viewed their practice.
What about students? Does that ever, I know especially, it's harder in elementary school than it is in high school, because the high school kids, you certainly have opinions. You have one opinion going in and oftentimes another opinion going out that you had.
Mrs. Crotty, the state absolutely agrees with you. You may recall the 5 Essentials survey that the state had us do last school year, and that allowed students, staff, and parents to answer questions not based on these same standards, but again, based on their perception, their understanding of the building. They had a chance to kind of speak up about how buildings were run. So the 5 Essentials survey gathered that it's not a part of the ValEd, it's not a part of the principal evaluation process, but it is valuable information that we've been able to collect.
I guess what you didn't talk about that my question is, I know when we've done surveys, the numbers show kind of the, where the problems lie or where the strengths lie, but the comments are really what, are there comments to this as well rather than just numbers, metrics assigned?
There are no comments for ValEd. ValEd does not, no, there are no comments for ValEd, but there are in the 5 Essentials.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to, I'm part of my role is I'm also a student advisor to the Illinois State Board of Education, and so I got to be a part of this whole process kind of last year, witnessing, because it's a totally new change, and I just want to say that it's actually really cool to see like our district like do really well with it, because there's a lot of other districts that are kind of stuck in the mud and complaining about it. But and also like the whole training thing, like it's some really complex stuff. I still can't comprehend how you guys are able to do that and still do your job. And like, I don't know how it's humanly possible. Yeah. So I just think it's really cool to kind of see the full circle of it. Yeah.
Thank you.
So the instrument that you're using with the principals, is that going to help us as we have to implement that with teachers and like working out the kinks that you're working on now? Okay.
Yes.
Can you speak to that just a little bit?
Yes. In the same way that the assistant principal evaluation calls for a student growth piece, the same law, PIRA, calls for teacher evaluations to incorporate a student growth piece, not for a few more years. And I do think, to answer your question directly, I think some of the learnings that we're having right now will help us as we develop that model. We're going to have to do it. It's in the law. We want to do it. We want to do it really well. We want to set an example for other districts as we're doing it. And I absolutely think that what we're learning here will help us as we develop that.
Any other comments? Well, I think it's very exciting to think of something, not all mandates do we look at and welcome and have great positive outcomes for our specific district. But it looks like this particular requirement, taught us a little bit about ourselves, and it was as we've talked about, a very positive outcome. So I look forward to hearing the next report. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So at this time, what I'd like to do is just a brief update for the Board of Education regarding AYP. So my update is really going to focus on the status of Mill Street Elementary School and Beebe Elementary School as it relates to the requirement for school choice. As you know, Mill and Beebe are two of our schools that receive federal Title I funds. And schools that receive federal Title I funds and do not make AYP are considered to be in federal school improvement status. Public schools in this status have failed to make AYP for 2 consecutive years in the same subject area are required to offer choice. Mill Street actually did make AYP this year under the safe harbor provision, but was required to offer choice last year. And schools that have had to offer choice are required to make AYP for 2 consecutive years before no longer being required to offer that choice. So, in fact, Mill Street showed some impressive student growth based on other assessments that we do as well. Beebe also showed some improvement in reading and math for several subgroups, but unfortunately I was not able to reach the overall AYP mark. But again, as I said, on both the ISAT and other measurements have shown growth in their students. During the week of August 5th, Mill Street and Beebe parents were mailed a letter explaining their school status and their options for choice. Where more than one receiving school is available, we must offer multiple options for choice sites. We offered Meadow Glens and Highlands as available receiving schools. So of the 2 schools, 11 students opted to move to Highlands and 4 opted to move to Meadow Glens. The school district will continue to work with our principals and faculties at all of our schools to provide the necessary academic support for improvement. Such support will include continuing with ongoing analysis of student achievement and student data to prioritize our improvement plans and goals, utilizing assessment systems to closely monitor individual student growth, and focus on development efforts in classroom instruction. So we, again, like I said, overall, we were pleased with some of the growth that we saw in our schools, even those where we had to offer choice. We're committed to continuing to support our schools. We're not the only district in a boat like this, as the bar is higher and higher, and several changes in terms of how we're assessed. More districts are in the boat that we are having to offer choice. So that's our update. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to address those.
Dan, did I hear you correctly that there are 11 moving to Highland, 4 to Meadow Glen?
That's correct.
Okay, so 15 in total.
Correct.
Awesome. Okay. Good.
Just great to see the progress.
Next item, President's report. I do not have a report. Any other Board of Education reports this evening? Anyone? Yes.
Terry, do you want to share about the Resolutions Committee?
I went to the resolutions meeting on August 2nd, and of course, we had resolution number 20, which was about having the legislature tell us when they're going to have unfunded mandates and also take into consideration some of the costs for school districts. So when that came up, I read the statement that was prepared by Kristen and Erica Nelson from Glen Ellen, and the resolution passed. So when it comes this time around, it'll be to adopt. There was no discussion on it, so it was very well crafted, and everybody appreciated it.
We'll see that as a board before the Triple I conference, so we'll probably see that in early November, late October. We'll get it to review all the resolutions, and it'll be kind of fun to have one of our own there. Great,
Exactly.
Great work. Thank you again, Kristen, for your help on that, and Terry as well. Thanks so much. Next item, our monthly reports. You can see they're all here: Treasury report, investment, insurance report, and budget report. And you'll notice that there isn't an investment report this month. And if you can just hold that thought for a second, Brad's going to talk about some of the consolidation and changes and good work. I had the chance of meeting with him today, but we'll get to that in 1 second. For bills and claims, I was bills and claims, and I am happy to report that I met with Brad and had a number of questions, and he had very thoughtful and good answers to all of them, and shared with me some of the different style effects. And being an accountant, I love when things flow into each other. So some changes he's making. Doing the right thing, evaluating everything, kind of slowly evaluating, and kind of has a plan for how some things are going to change down the road. So let me first start by saying I move approval of warrant number 380926 through warrant number 381664, totaling $26,640,563.49 for the period of July 16th, 2013 to August 19th, 2013. And also items on the consent agenda. This is a little complicated. 8.01, 8.02, 8.03 with the exclusion of the August 5th meeting because we had a board member that was missing. 8.04 and 8.05, and we will come back to the August 5th meeting to vote on that in just a second. And
Second,
yes, thank you. Okey doke. We have a motion and a second. For the consent agenda, items 8.01 through 8.05, excluding the August 5th board meeting minutes. Bell.
Yes.
Vote, please.
Hi.
Price,
yes.
Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Watkey,
Yes.
Fielden,
Yes.
Romberg,
Yes.
Crotty,
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. And just to complicate things, we'll go back to 8.03, the August 5th meeting. Again, we had a board member that was not there that evening. We had a very brief open session meeting. As you'll know, it was just the HR department had some hires that they needed some approvals on. And if we can have a motion for that one.
I move approval of the board meeting minutes from August 5, 2013.
Second?
Great. Okay, we have a motion and a second for the board meeting minutes for 8/5/2013. And if we could have a roll call vote on that.
Crotty,
Yes.
Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Fielden,
Yes.
Price,
Yes.
Yench,
Abstain.
Watkey,
Yes.
Romberg,
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. And next on our agenda is 9.01, a second reading of the policy we had a chance to discuss last time on professional personnel substitute teachers.
We took advantage of that August 5th Board of Education meeting to present for a first reading, Board Policy 5220. We had to bring this forward to the Board of Education as a result of the recent bargaining with the NUEA in the elimination of the Step BA plus 12, Step 7, from the salary schedule. Policy has written identified that in the mechanism to determine rate of pay for long-term substitutes. While we were doing that, we also took advantage of updating some language in the policy consistent with changes in legislation. So procedurally, there were no changes to this policy, only updating on language, and then also the cell in terms of how we will determine rate of pay for our long-term substitutes. Any questions that you have, Carol Hedman, our Chief Human Resources Officer, could address.
Questions?
I move approval of, I lost it, sorry.
901.
901 is presented.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval of the professional personnel substitute teachers. Ann?
Price?
Yes.
Romberg?
Yes.
Yench?
Aye.
Fielden?
Yes.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Wonky? Yes. Pratty?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. And if I can just, this is the way I started out the meeting, one step ahead. I mentioned to you when we went through the board reports that there was no, in 7.03, the insurance report was not there. And there's a very good explanation, and I'm going to let Brad just speak to that for just a second. And a couple of the minor things that you might have noticed, really cool thing. Again, an accountant. Really cool thing on the summary of claims that I loved that he did. So,
all right. Well, thank you. I appreciate the compliments. As far as the insurance report, when I came to the district, I noticed it was 1 month in arrears, and the other reports were 2. So I just wanted for timing. I thought it'd be appropriate that the board is reviewing all the reports at the same timing on the same month in arrears. So we had no insurance report this month. We'll be on track with it, and you'll be getting it on a regular basis going forward. As far as really just some of the minor things, as we go through each of the reports, I'm trying to look at readability of the reports so it makes sense. Numbers tie across from one report to the other. For example, this month on the summary of claims, we added a new section to the top. When you looked at that before, it wasn't readily identifiable between the detailed list of bills. You couldn't track that number back to the summary because the payroll numbers were combined in there. Mm-hmm. So we broke that apart. We put the warrants on the top, followed by the payroll summary, and then broke it down by funds. And we also updated the legal reference to the top of the report to make sure that was current. And so just some little tweaking we're going to do. I'll continue to work with you. If I do something you don't like, let me know. But just trying to improve the readability of the reports.
Great. Thank you, Brad.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. And so next thing on our agenda, our schedule of events. Things are getting very busy, and I thank Julie and Ann Bell and all the rest of us that try to keep us in order, keep us scheduled, that these have been out there for a long time. And we try to make all we can. We can't always make everything. But any comments on schedule of events?
Just a quick comment. Earlier, I referenced the future focus planned sessions for facilities on September 18th and 19th, but you'll also note in June, we had a rainout of one of our future focus sessions on finance. We'll be repeating that session on Wednesday, September 11th.
And I don't know how helpful it is to everybody. I love getting the invitations, but I think we need an invitation to the meeting you just mentioned. So if we can get that, and other people, if that's helpful to them, it's one more. It's better to show up on your calendar twice than not at all, right? Next, I will entertain a motion to adjourn, unless there's something somebody else wants to talk about.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? No, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, everyone on the World Wide Web and district staff. And it's a very exciting, Wednesday's a big day. Is everybody